mean, Usyk said specifically and explicitly that he was never worried during the course of that fight. Now, you've just alluded to the fact there was a significant proportion of that fight where the momentum was with Fury. Do you buy that narrative from Oleksandr?
I think he said that after taking that big uppercut. What was that, in round 6 or something, when he took that big uppercut and he recognised that he could take the best that Fury could throw at him. And he always felt in control of it, even when, as Frazer said there, the momentum was totally going away from him. I think he had a good first 4 rounds, didn't he? And then 5, 6, 7, they sort of went, Fury changed it. But what Oleksandr showed was that he has that adaptability and that class to be able to change things around when things are, when his back's up against the wall, he doesn't feel sorry for himself and he works things out. So I believe that he truly believes that he was still totally in control of that fight and it was just that bad little period that he went through,
He talks about rematches being harder, and that's a mixed bag, isn't it? I mean, we'll find out in Frazer's life sooner rather than later if that makes, and we'll talk about that a little bit further on in the show. Do you think, in this instance, I mean, certainly Usyk in the first fight against Anthony Joshua, we all criticise Anthony for the tactical selection that he made in that fight. In the second fight, it was more difficult. Do you expect it to be more difficult for Usyk in the second fight with Fury? Because I certainly do. I go along with Frazer to some extent, which is if the Fury that we have looked at in the past turns up, which I'm not sure he was as conditioned as he needed to be for this fight, I think it will be a more difficult fight. But more importantly, what do you two think?
I'm totally with you. I think that if we get the Fury that we know is at his best, then I think he can win the fight, definitely. I think that he has that adaptability as well and that capability to be able to turn things around. Fury's got a great boxing IQ as well, and everyone that you speak to, all you guys, all the other heavyweights that spar with him, go like, he is on a different level in many ways. But I suppose $1 million question, you'll probably be able to answer this one, Frazer, is that Tyson Fury no longer? Has Father Time to some extent caught up with him? And we know now his feet don't move the way that if you go back to 2015, when he beat Klitschko and you saw the movement, the way that he moved around, that trilogy with Deontay Wilder, has that taken something out of him? And has he lost that little bit of movement that may be the difference between winning and losing against Usyk?
Well, all naturally, as like you say, Father Time, people do slow down.
Yeah.
Do I believe Tyson has? Because we haven't seen him dancing around the ring, but I didn't expect him to see him do that against Oleksandr Usyk. He's considerably bigger, stronger, and stylistically, you wouldn't want to see Tyson moving as much as he did against Klitschko. So I do think that I still think he's in great condition. I still think with Tyson, it's all about the training camp, and I'd like to see him have tactics and sort of stick to them. We all seen the showboating, and I think at times in the fight, he sort of went into his own mind and did his own thing. But, I think, for me, after having that experience with Usyk, that 12 rounds, going into the second time, you've half got an idea of what's coming at you. Don't get me wrong, I think he'll change tactics.
So what does he do tactically? Because he made a big 4-act play about he was fighting a pumped-up middleweight and that size was going to make a lot of difference. He was the one. Despite the fact the momentum was with him during certain aspects of the fight, he was the one that got buzzed. He was the one that nearly got knocked out. So with that in mind, what does he do differently in this fight?
I think conditioning is definitely going to be something that they're going to look to do more of and be more conditioned. But that shot, I feel if the shot that rocked him, was it round 9? Was it or round 8? Towards the end of the
round
fight,
9. Round 9, yeah.
I feel if that shot hits him early on, it doesn't have nowhere near the same amount of effect as it did towards the end. So you're going to look at condition. From what I seen, when Tyson was on top, Tyson was the one taking the fight to Usyk.
Yeah.
And that wasn't all heavy shots. It was just, I was there, obviously neutral, but obviously a little bit behind Tyson.
Yeah, of course.
Anytime Tyson led off and was in control, he was punching first. He wasn't waiting for Usyk, because when you wait for Usyk, the skill set and the setup of the shots, that's what he wants. He wants time and space to be able to do that.
I want to see Tyson bully him more, be more aggressive. Easier said than done, because we wanted to see Anthony Joshua do that as well. And for some reason, Oleksandr Usyk has that ability to neutralise that and keep them at range and do, he's sort of he's the one that controls the space and whatnot. But with Fury, his main asset going into that, of a guy of 19 and a half, sometimes nearly 20 stone, is you have to bully this guy. You've got to take the fight to him. Like you say, punch first. And, it's easy for us to say tactically what he's got to do, but that's the difference between the class in fighters. When you look at it and you go, Usyk's just got that level to be able, that ability to be able to up his game each time. He's done it against Joshua, and he's done it now against Fury, who are two big guys.
The issue you have when you're fighting Usyk is when you punch, you leave gaps. That's any fighter in the world, by the way. It doesn't matter who you are. The difference is some people have the ability to exploit that and punch into the gaps, and some people don't. If you make a mistake against Oleksandr Usyk, you get punished. It's simple as that. So every time Tyson does leave off, he's leaving himself a little bit vulnerable. But that's sort of the risk that you have to take.
It's risk and reward, isn't it? Like he has to do that.
Can I ask you boys a global question about this idea that we've got these generational heavyweights, and we talk about Oleksandr Usyk, and we've seen cruiserweights step up before in Evander Holyfield, and to a lesser degree David Haye, albeit he won a world title. Right? We've talked about Anthony Joshua, and we've talked about Tyson Fury as being great fighters. In my mind's eye, is there a question to be asked and answered that they're not as good as we think they are? Because I think that if Usyk steps up against Lennox Lewis would have ragdolled him. Well, and I look at this generation of heavyweights, with all due respect, Frazer, because you're a current heavyweight, and look at them and say, are they as good as we've made them out to be? Is Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury as good as we've made them out to be, that Oleksandr Usyk can step up despite the great footwork, despite the angles that he makes, and despite the boxing IQ, and do the damage that he's done to these so-called invincible, or certainly significant heavyweights?
My answer to that is, I think we do live in a good generation of heavyweights. And I do think that...
Well, you wouldn't, because your head's up Anthony Joshua's backside.
No, that's wrong. That's totally wrong. Tyson Fury could compete with all the other eras. I believe that. Lennox Lewis is the standout for me, by the way. I think that Lennox Lewis would be dominant over all of them. But what I'm saying is, I still think that we live in a generation of heavyweights where they would be competitive with any other generation. I truly believe that. Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk, you pick those three names out. They're the big names of this generation right now. I think that they could compete in any generation.
It's always difficult to say, isn't it? Because it's a dream fight. What if? We are never going to know. But what I will say is, I think a lot of the top cruiserweights aren't given enough credit when they do step up, because as a heavyweight that's been in the ring with a lot of cruiserweights sparring and just over the years, I honestly believe that it is more difficult against a fairly hard punching, fast cruiserweight. Than some big ponderous heavyweights. You know, I'd personally say that they're a lot more, especially a lot of these cruiserweights. They are heavyweights that make weight, really and truly. A lot of them could go up quite easily. Like obviously in my gym, we got Richard Riatpour, and punch power wise, he probably hits harder than a lot of the heavyweights I've been in the ring with. So
it's because of the speed of the shot as well, and the accuracy of the shot.
They just do things a lot quicker. And they're also really good boxers. A lot of good IQ in the cruiserweight division.
Have you sparred Usyk?
Never. No. Obviously, it's an experience that you can only.
Because I know he's mixed it with a lot of the heavyweights over in his sparring and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people that go there, and you hear all these stories about the sparring. I mean, for the last camp, when I was in Saudi at the weigh-in, I met a big Jamaican heavyweight, and I can't remember his name. And he's floating around the weigh-in, telling everyone stories of how he's had Usyk down 3 times in sparring. So you hear these stories, they float around the scene all the time.